Welcome back to another episode of Signal Fire Radio, a show about ambitious leadership for ambitious leaders, where each and every day we explore with deep curiosity what makes, well, I guess, Matt, what makes ambitious leaders? And we have found, I think, through this journey, Evan, my other stellar friend and co-host, that everybody kind of has all these same little things in common. They feed their minds, they strengthen their bodies, they enrich their spirits, and they grow their tribes. Mm-hmm. How are you?
I'm good.
Yeah?
Yeah, I've got all those things.
Yes, you do. And you're a civilian now, too.
I'm a civilian.
Which is super awesome.
That's the best part.
Yep. You Are you still liking it? Do you want to go back to the Army yet?
Not one bit.
Not yet?
No.
Not yet? Matthew, how are you today?
Fantastic.
You have spoken and socialized with our guest more than either of us have. Mm-hmm. Encapsulate the Renaissance man that is Peter Maguire.
So,
if you can.
Well, I gotta preface that with I've only hung out with him like once or twice with mutual friends.
Okay.
Ren and Ashley, and Bruce Mock,
and firearms.
Oh yeah, and fire. Oh, that's right. Yeah, we were shooting. I brought one of my rifles, and we were going nuts on the fantail of Ashley and Ren's old. What was that? A
big Chris Craft. Yeah. Big gas engine.
Like a fancy 50, 60 styles boat.
Ooh.
But it was like middle of the winter time, and we were cruising on the river, the Cape Fear, and we were just. It was a lot of fun.
So what can't Peter do?
Yeah, what can't Peter do?
Well, dude, in
math. And taxes.
Pay somebody for that.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, Peter. The folks that are new to the audience.
Where are you from?
Start us in the very beginning.
I'm originally from Southern California and grew up there. Was a bit of a degenerate and surfer and involved in the underground economy and didn't plan on going to college or anything. Moved to Australia to surf and then reached terminal velocity with that. Came back to California within about 3 days, realized I could never live there again, and then went east to college. Went to extreme left-wing kind of liberal arts school, Bard College for undergraduate. Did very well, was accepted into Columbia's PhD program in history. Wrote my dissertation on the Nuremberg trials and the law and theory of war under Brigadier General Telford Taylor, who was chief prosecutor at Nuremberg. And then my first job out of graduate school was to go to Cambodia to work as a war crimes investigator at around a prison called Tuol Sleng that roughly 20,000 people went in. Somewhere around 20 survived. Everybody was photographed and interrogated. Some colleagues of mine had found the original negatives. The Khmer Rouge was still a powerful force at that time. So I never thought there would be legal accountability. So we were basically documenting and preserving. And then I was finding the survivors. And then it led to me finding the guards, executioners, and getting them all to talk over about a 10-year period.
What was that like? Getting them to trust you and open up and tell you the real deal?
It's interesting, because then when the War on Terror began, I crossed paths with at that time in Cambodia, you could buy SAM-2 missiles, you could buy kilos of heroin, you could buy Russian Mi helicopters. The most powerful guy in the region was a opium warlord named Theng Bun Ma, who had his own Mi helicopters with Russian pilots that he would lend to whatever side he wanted to win in an internal coup. And so it was real freedom. And so I pretty much worked alone. I had a trusted fixer named Sok Sin, but I got a lot more with sugar than I did with salt. And then a lot of colleagues of mine, when the War on Terror began, went on to work in interrogations in southern Thailand, the first black sites and stuff like that. And I could see that we were very much on the wrong track in terms of interrogations. I coerced and lightly threatened, but never to the extent of some of that stuff. And it wasn't, you know how to get results. That wasn't the way to get results. So that was disappointing to me when we went down that road. But in my case, it was trust, and bribery and that type of stuff. And one real kind of moment of satori that I had was with a guy named Hem Hoi, who they called the Butcher, who basically was accused of executing 5,000 people with an iron bar to the back of the neck. They wouldn't shoot him. They wouldn't, didn't want to waste a bullet, so they'd have him kneel on a ditch, whack him in the back of the neck. And so, I was expecting to meet evil incarnate with Hoy, and he was this little Cambodian bog peasant farmer. And I started talking to him, how'd you get in the military? He said, well, the Khmer Rouge came to my village, and you either go or you die. So my first, they took me to training, I ran away. They took me back, I ran away a second time. Third time, they put me to the front. In my first battle, I got shot in the head. I got shot a couple more times. They were like, Comrade Hoy, you're going to die, lead the charge. And so he got shot a bunch more times. He survived that. Then in the invasion of Phnom Penh, he got a grenade dropped on his head. And I said, wow, were you afraid you were going to die? He goes, I wasn't afraid of that. I was afraid the Vietnamese were going to eat my liver in front of me. So he crawled under a house, survived that. And so then, he's under a house, bleeding, covered in shrapnel, everything, for I don't know how long, but pretty long. Like this is, no medevacs and that type of stuff. And so he said, and then at that point they said, oh, Comrade Hoy, you're such a valiant warrior. We have a special job for you. We're sending you to S-21 prison. So then he starts as the lowest level guard, and then there were something like 1,200 people who worked at that prison over the 3 years it was open. 500 of them wound up as prisoners. You would break an axe, and they'd say, oh, you're CIA. You'd scream at night in a dream, and they'd say, oh, you're KGB. Like, this is how mad it was. And so all his superiors kept getting killed. So he moved up the chain of command to head guard, and suddenly, he's driving the trucks to the killing field. So I said, Hoy, how did it feel about, classic, like, dipshit Westerner question, how did it feel to do it? Right. And he just goes, it was death either way.
Yeah.
And that's the reality of it, and the worst guy was the one who took the pictures. And this guy was like one of the great hustlers I've ever met in my life. And he was one of the real like Hitler Youth of the Khmer Rouge, sent to China for training. And this guy was smart. And the first time I met him, he was trying to get me to go to the U.S. Embassy to get him a meeting because he had like 2,000 soldiers ready to capture Pol Pot. And that's when the Khmer Rouge was having an internal civil war about 97, and that's when Pol Pot was ultimately captured. So you begin to see the many shades of gray. You begin to see that the truth at a university seminar room is not really the truth in the field, and so it was my real education. The stuff at the university. And then meanwhile, in Cambridge, New York City, Berkeley, and two other, big cities, we've got international law and the ICC's ready to reinstate, global justice. And so there's this dissonance between the world that I'm living in and the world that I'm retreating to occasionally, and it just gets crazier and crazier. And I kind of have a long-term sort of conflict with what I call the human rights industry, because it is an industry. And if you don't toe the line, you're very much an apostate, and that's a role that I've relished for many years.
What does that industry look like, in your opinion?
It's basically. It reminds me almost of like a socialist front organ, like the Internationale or something at a certain point. After 9/11, everything went pear-shaped for them. But at that moment, in the wake of the Cold War, it was delusional, some of the things people were saying. Like, all we need is the ICC. And I'd say, well, okay, who's going to capture the Security Council powers? Like, when you want to indict a Chinese leader, how many divisions do you have? They say, oh, that's just that military stuff. That's silly. Like, the people that they held in such contempt were supposed to do the heavy lifting for them, as we see today a similar scenario in Chicago, where the police that Mayor Lightfoot held in such great contempt in the summer of 2020, suddenly now they're supposed to do their jobs and report. And no, you don't get it both ways. And we're seeing a kind of societal breakdown on many levels. We've undergone what I would call a cultural revolution, a corporate-sponsored cultural revolution in 2020 and 21. And it doesn't surprise me. I mean, we killed God, we killed capitalism, we killed political ideology. So, nature abhors a vacuum. Something's going to fill it. And now we have these kind of anti-oppositional ideologies, whether it's social justice or Black Lives Matters. On the face of it, you can oppose those things. Who's against social justice? Who's against fairness for blacks? Nobody in their right mind. But then when you get into the minutia, when you get into the weeds of it, it's the devil's in the details, as it always is.
Mm-hmm. Where do you see, what's the end conclusion of that then?
Of this moment we're in?
Yeah.
Counter-revolution.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we're beginning to see it already. And I'm so cynical when it comes to politics. I kind of look at it like college football or something. And I tell my extremely conservative friends, like, look, you should still be doing end zone dances from 2016. Like, that defeat of Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton was one of the greatest moments of political schadenfreude, taking, joy in someone else's misery in your political life. So the fact that Trump got over the tips of his skis in his first term, that was fairly predictable. But now the pendulum's swinging back hard the other way because of the utter incompetence of the Biden administration and things like, the border. Let's just take that as a prominent example. NAFTA really began the process of the erosion of the nation state. The sovereign nation state is the thing that has guided us since the Treaty of Westphalia in 1648, that came at the end of the 30 Years' War, a religious war that I think killed like 20 million from disease and starvation. So people went, religion isn't that great a way to organize a society. Let's go with this nation state thing. It's certainly imperfect, but it has been the paradigm since, for hundreds of years. So now we're going to say borders don't matter, citizenship doesn't matter. This is not a lighthearted decision. This isn't something you kind of just do in the middle of the night and go, hey, look over there. Hey, no, that's not really how, if you want to do it, but explain to us how you're going to do it. And be aware of the unanticipated side effects and all the things that come with it. And so we've entered into an incredibly dishonest period in history, and we have a body politic that's used to it. And so I think we're going to see some just whipsaw swinging, and I think we're going to swing really hard to the right, and the left is not going to like the rules and the way that they've played imposed on them. You can't have it both ways. Mm-hmm. And I think, the moment, the like high water moment, and I may be wrong, but I'll predict this, is this Dave Chappelle thing.
Oh, yeah.
Because what's a corporation about? Making money.
Presumably.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, making money. That's all I expect of a corporation. I don't care if they buy green paper towels. It'd be nice, all that stuff, but it isn't what it is. Let's all be honest. If their bottom line doesn't make it, they don't make it. And so the Chappelle thing and canceling Chappelle, that all got in the way of the bottom line. That show has been incredibly popular. The louder people scream, the more people are going to watch. Once I heard people screaming, I got to watch it. I think Dave Chappelle's really funny. Yeah. And when I watched it, there's a kind of cognitive dissonance that we're seeing all the time, where what we're told we're going to see is not, in fact, what we see. And the more that cognitive dissonance grows, the more problem you have holding up the narrative. One of the great books I've ever read, and you only need to know this sentence and you can lie and say you read it too, is Thomas Kuhn's Structure of Scientific Revolutions. And he argues that before every scientific revolution, whether it's the world is flat, turning to the world is round, and I'm not very good at science, so I'll stick with that analogy. The greatest pushback for the collapse of the existing model or paradigm is at the moment before its collapse. The second before its collapse. That's when you burn the people that say the world is round. And I think, we're seeing some incredible pushback right now. And, whether it's talking about COVID, whether it's, you can't talk about that. And that I'm a First Amendment absolutist in that anything less is pure sophistry. I'm for Marxists to be able to say whatever they want. I'm for far-right people to say whatever they want because it's the only consistent intellectual position. And the rest of it is sophistry, you're playing word games. The beginning of the word games begin with hate speech laws, and I witnessed that on university campuses, speech codes. And I was against that in the late 80s, and it's just been this kind of mission creep into every aspect. Things that were once relegated to dingy, academic literary theory departments are now mainstream. But again, it's kind of a road to nowhere because much of it comes from postmodernism. There are no facts, there are only interpretations, so you affirm nothing at the end of the day. So, again, we've entered this void, and I think we're going to see, next prediction is we're going to see a coalition of whites, blacks, Hispanics, and Asians that are middle-class people with middle-class values, that want to pay their bills, want to have health insurance, that want their kids to go to schools where they're not going to have to worry about getting shot, like my 2 kids at New Hanover. They're 5 fights in 1 week, shooting in the first week, and they're not freaked out about it. But at the same time, that shouldn't be part of the, and what's the really interesting thing is because the depths and roots of the contradictions are so deep, we can't really even touch the problem. So we say, we've got a great solution, clear backpacks. Yeah, we're going to have the students wear clear backpacks, and that's going to stop shooting. You can't make it up. So, yeah.
I hate to stop you right here. We're going to take a super fast break, and then we're going to come right back because I have 2 questions that popped into my head, Evan. I can see your wheels turning too as well.
Just want to keep listening.
Okay, all right. We're gonna take a really quick break. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere with Peter Maguire right here on Signal Fire Radio. Hey, welcome to another episode of Dress Codes Explained. I'm your host, Rob Renz, president of the Shooting Warriors Foundation, and we are coming to you from Blue Mind Co-working Space. If you are in Wilmington, North Carolina, and you are in need of short-term or long-term office space, please check out Blue Mind. We'll leave details on how to get in touch with them at the end of this video. Today, we're going to talk about something extremely important because every single sports code is different, and every sports code is stitched with different elements in it that will be acceptable in different environments. So the first one we have here today, this is a super casual sports coat. You always want to check the lapel first. This is known as a notch lapel. It's the most common type of lapel that you'll see in sports coats. Pretty much anything that you get off the rack will have a notch lapel. It'll come standard with that. Next is your liner. You'll see that this one has a half liner, so that means that there's nothing here along the back. This is a great coat to wear in warmer climates or in spring and summer if you're at the areas that might get a little bit colder. Let's see here. This is a 2-button suit, so it only has 2 buttons. This is pretty much standard. Don't wear a 3-button suit anymore. Double-breasted suits might be making a comeback, but you only want to wear those if you're really, really confident in yourself and in your wardrobe. Go with the 2-button suit. You can never go wrong with it. Now, the pockets on this is a much more casual pocket. This is called a patch pocket. So we'll explain on the next coat what a jetted pocket is, but this is a patch pocket, so you'll see this on more casual sports coats. So this would be a great coat to wear with jeans and to dress down, but that's going to do it for a notch lapel and a 2-button. The next one we have assistance, I tell you what. This is a little bit more of a dressed up coat. So this, if we start with the lapel, is known as a peak lapel. Now you'll see this on a lot of formal wear on tuxedos, but it is a more fashion forward lapel to have a peak lapel like this. Some gentlemen might not like that because it really draws attention up to your neck. So you really got to be confident in yourself if you're going to wear a peak lapel. Now this also has a patch pocket. So this is kind of this was actually donated to us, to Suiting Warriors, from a GQ fashion shoot. So the peak lapel and the patch pocket, it's like formal and informal all on one sports coat. But you also see this one has a half liner, has a nice custom paisley liner in it. You'd have to be really bold to wear a coat like this. Because it is pretty fashion forward. The last one that we have, this is what's known as a shawl lapel. So you can see here, there is no notch in it, there is no peak. This is a shawl lapel. You'll see this on tuxedos a lot. This is a coat that you could wear out like as a dinner jacket if you're going out to something formal. And you'll see here, this has jetted pockets here. So it's not a patch, it's all sewn in. The liner of the pocket is actually inside the coat, so it doesn't have a pocket sticking out inside of here. And then the last thing with this is a one button suit sports coat. You'll see this a lot with more formal coats like tuxedos and dinner jackets, a shawl lapel and a one button suit. That's how you know it's a bit more formal. Last but not least, this does not have any vents on the back. Oftentimes you'll see a double vented or a single vented sports coat. This doesn't have one. So this is a coat that you would wear in a more formal setting. That's going to do it for this week's episode of Dress Codes Explained. If you're interested in getting involved with Suiting Warriors, please get in touch with us. We are looking for volunteers and donors every single day. You can check out our website, suitingwarriors.org, or email me directly at info@suitingwarriors.org. We'll talk to you next week on Dress Codes Explained.
Being that I've been full-time with Signal Fire now for a few months, I find a frequent question that clients and prospects are asking me. So when we enter into this partnership with the Signal Fire team, what is the experience going to look like? We have the fortunate location of being in the Cargo District here in Wilmington, North Carolina. We got a brand new studio and a pretty cool vibe co-work space called Co-works. And we bring in our clients to the studio once a month, 3 to 4 hours. And in that time window, we talk about the things that you're passionate about, the things that pertain to your business and that are going to help grow either your products or your services, but it gets your niche, it gets your value proposition out there in the most engaging content, which is video. So here in the studio, in that 4-hour window, we develop podcasts, YouTube channel videos, and the soundbite videos, which are 60 to 90 second video segments used to leverage on social platforms. And 7 days after recording, you get an email from me saying, hey dude, here's the link to the Google Share Drive. And that's where the journey begins, where we begin coaching you how to use our marketing model to leverage the greatest value out of all these media assets. So please, we are here, ready for you, and we can't wait to bring you in the studio. But one thing I will say is it's an absolute blast.
Hey, welcome back to Signal Fire Radio. Fantastic conversation going with our guest, Peter Maguire, author of Tie Stick, bunch of books that you've written. I didn't have the whole list in front of me, but I did read Tie Stick, and I thought it was very...
That was my vacation book.
Was
my other
it?
One's, Law and War. That's a real happy book.
That's
and then
the deep
there's
stuff.
Then there's Slit Your Wrists, Facing Death in Cambodia. That's one that
But that
should
was
come with Prozac.
Saturday morning reading.
Saturday
Yeah.
morning, just a light stuff. Yeah. But that was your life. I mean, you lived that for how many years were you there, did you say, in Cambodia?
On and off for about 10 or 12.
Unreal.
Yeah. But a few months a year.
Now, do you speak Cambodian?
Chamrup soy saksabai. No,
Hell yeah.
No, I can say like
Not a lick.
You know, give me some beer. That
Right.
chicken's cold. Like,
Yeah.
not really.
And just to go back like into your story, what were the time frames that you were there? Like what
First,
this was post-
end of 93.
Okay.
Because to me, that was the most outstanding, egregious destruction of the never again promise, right? Genocide committed, 2 out of 10 million people killed. Then the perpetrators were rewarded by the U.S., by the UN, by China. The Chinese still lie about the extent to their sponsorship and involvement for the Cambodian genocide. I took great pleasure in exposing evidence of their complicity and sponsorship of the Khmer Rouge genocide. I'm not a big fan of China. I really don't trust almost anything that the state media says. I don't fear them the way many do today. I think their greatest threat is the one that's been there since the time of the emperors, which is internal peasant rebellion. So,
How do you think that'll happen in our lifetime?
at the rate things are moving, because I watched the Belt and Road Initiative. And I'm watching these roads to nowhere. I'm watching skyscrapers go up in Bangkok and Phnom Penh, and I'm thinking, like, who's going to buy all this crap? And it didn't make any sense to me. So I think we really have no idea of the extent to how bad it is. Sources have told me in internal Chinese cities, people are starting to stockpile heating fuel, gas, things like that. And these are always harbingers. I mean, look at the Great Leap Forward or the Cultural Revolution and the official account of it. Or, Mao today swam up the Yangtze and broke the world record of Mark Spitz. I mean, that's how delusional some of the stuff is. And so, my kids love that because I homeschooled them for 4 years. Like Mao breaking the world record for the 20 minutes swim up the Yangtze. And
Was that a real story?
It was a real story.
Time for current affairs, kids. Come on, sit down.
Yeah.
The propaganda machine has been chugging for centuries.
So we really don't know. And again, I mean, the Vietnamese fought them. I wouldn't call it a standstill, but they definitely did not roll over the Vietnamese in '79 when they fought. So they've got the good gear. They've got a lot of soldiers. Do they have the will? And that's what it comes down to in military affairs. What's their policy objective? They're suffering from the same thing every empire does, which is imperial overstretch. From Africa to Southeast Asia, that's what got us. That's what got the British. So, it's not so clear cut. I think they may have to do something dramatic to get out of the jam they've put themselves in.
That was going to be my question in perfect segue. The fall of empires. I read an interesting take regarding like the similarities between the fall of the Roman Empire to where we are positioned currently in the United States of America. Do you see any similarities there?
Absolutely. I mean, it's Paul Kennedy wrote the great book on it called The Rise and Fall of Great Powers. And he says, it's imperial overstretch. The empire gets spread too wide and too thin. And the really guiding ideology of the post 9/11 period was from the paper Rebuilding America's Defenses, from the project of New American Century. 15 signatories of it went in to serve in the Bush administration. And basically they said, America must be prepared to fight two big wars in two different theaters at all times, irrespective of the financial cost. And we tried, and it didn't work. And we didn't have coherent policy objectives, and that's Clausewitz 101. Freedom isn't a coherent policy objective. And that was the thing to me that was very heartbreaking to watch. Was from the captain on down, I saw great committed people. But once you got above captain, or really, to me, the big break was lieutenant colonel. Like, who gets made a colonel? Like, I met some incredible lieutenant colonels that never got above lieutenant colonel because they were too honest. And so I saw a real failure of civilian leadership, as we were you were talking about leadership, and real moral cowardice and inability and unwillingness to to take responsibility when things go sideways, and they do go sideways in combat, in policy, and there's too many floating variables. You're going to make mistakes, and you have to take ownership of your mistakes, or you lose the respect of those you lead. And I don't, the idea that this, the Marine who criticizes Afghanistan the day after the bombing is the one who gets punished, yet that debacle that, I wrote a piece saying that, the Vae Victis, woe to the conquered. This wasn't Saigon. This was Phnom Penh, April 17, 1975, when the Khmer Rouge marched into town. This was a much more significant debacle. And symbolically, probably, and that's the thing, what they call optics today. This is very important because everything travels so quickly, and you can't put the genie back in the bottle once it's out.
Is it where do people go for truth these days?
It's really hard because it's really hard. I know many members of the elite press. Some are friends, and some aren't. But it's that's why I've started writing on Substack, because I can say whatever I want. And I've written for most of the publications out there, from Herald Tribune, New York Review of Books, and a lot of newspapers and stuff. But getting an op-ed published was getting near impossible. And you only get $250. I think it's like $350 for the New York Times. So I'm going what's the point of this? So then I saw, different people, Matt Taibbi and others, going to Substack. And I saw you have total freedom, and so I pretty much write a column a week on my Substack page called Sour Milk, and I say whatever I want. And
why sour milk?
Because I am sour milk. I'm a 56-year-old white man. My expiration date's right there on the carton. And so yeah. No, I don't. You can't cancel me. No way. And ultimately, I'm not going to succumb to emotional blackmail, right? That's what shocks me. I think William McNeil, the science reporter at the New York Times, he succumbed. Oh, they start apologizing and crawling. Doesn't work. Come on, you're welcome to hate me. But I don't make a lot of intellectual sense in that. I was writing about America's, what I called our original sort of profound anomaly, which is we're the nation of freedom, built on Indian land with slave labor. I wrote about that in 2000, and nobody patted me on the head for it. The same people that are woker than now wouldn't lift a finger to help me at that time. So I'm all over the ideological map, and and I get emails from military friends. Hey, man, you shouldn't criticize torture policy because you're feeding intel to the enemy and stuff. And I'm like, no, we should be a strong enough society to where we can tolerate criticism and we can point out flaws and fix them. And if we get into this binary mindset, then we're done, because this country is there's just too many different people from too many different places with too many religions and ideologies for there ever to be a state program. We have to be tolerant, and I like diversity. I think it's interesting, and it's so deep, and the Montyards in North Carolina. I mean, and who I played a small role in their evacuation here, are best allies in the Vietnam War. And they've been incredible citizens, the Vietnamese, incredible citizens. I mean, we have immigrant groups that have come to the United States and done an amazing job and really added to the strength of our society. And the idea that anybody who staggers across the border should suddenly be entitled to citizenship, I don't agree. There should be baselines. And the people that really work to get it, it's not fair to them. And, and so... Again, I mean, when Obama's agreeing with me, you know that the train's gone off the rails. And Sleepy Joe, 1 foot on the banana peel, 1 foot in the grave, Honestly,
if that's not a political cartoon right now, it should be.
No, it's my wife's line. But really, like I've told my liberal friends, I said, you ought to make Jen Psaki president. Like, forget about Kamala. She ain't going to get elected. Mm-hmm. But Jen Psaki, she shows up every day. She can keep a straight face and say almost anything.
Yeah, right.
And, that's a skill. It reminds me a little bit of the Khmer Rouge at times. But she's the best you guys got. Like,
she's a redhead?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Peppermint Patty. Yeah. So.
You mentioned, you kind of touched on like these societal trends. You talked about Chappelle. You could never get canceled. Nobody could ever cancel Dave Chappelle because he's honest. He's uncancelable. But we get these movements, mob mentality type movements. How do individual people? Because it starts with the person, right? I have to decide that I'm going to look across the other table to people and accept them for whatever they think, feel, believe, look, who they sleep with. But I feel like that has gone away, particularly with one side of the political aisle.
Sure.
How do we reform that? Because that's got to start at a grassroots level.
I think it's going to be ugly in that I think it's going to swing back the other way in the kind of ain't no fun when the rabbit got the gun kind of deal, where it's going to go very conservative, and the conservatives will take joy in imposing the same strictures on the liberals and that type. There will be that kind of pushing and shoving. And then my hope, and maybe I'm too optimistic, is that from that rubble, some grown-ups will emerge. We'll get rid of these 80-year-old leaders that can barely string two sentences together. I mean, the idea that Pelosi and Biden, I feel sorry for them, frankly.
I do too.
I watch the speeches, and it's like watching a nervous undergraduate give an oral report. And you're going like, oh, God, and so... but how does someone navigate it? It's not easy. I don't teach anymore. I love teaching, but I don't teach anymore. I had to make a decision, and I was under no pressure about saying anything. It was about the fact that we don't pay teachers what they deserve to be paid. Like half of the, something 30, 40% are part-timers, no benefits, no nothing. I call them academic Tom Joads. I know people who work at teach 5 classes between UNCW and Cape Fear. But what do you have? You have this big bloated layer of middle management, and these people who wear suits and drive around in golf carts. But
yeah, that's true.
We took Matt away from the university.
Yeah, I know.
He's gone now,
and
he's free.
And I Google the salaries because it's a public university. Top 25 are all bureaucrats. They are neither teachers nor scholars. And this is no good. And we see it in education now. Oh, you got a master's in education from Podunk Tech, and now you're going to come tell me, who spent 30 years in the classroom and I was a college trustee, so I know where the bodies are buried. I know, you're not going to tell me about education. Mm-hmm. And I'm a strict adherent to the Socratic method, which is very unpopular today.
Break it down and build it back up?
Yeah, absolutely. And like you're Marines, you know how it is. Like day one, you're going to be in that collective misery boat, and it's going to totally suck. And then on the last day, you get your grade, and they go, Professor Maguire, I go, just call me Peter, man. It's over. Like that was all a show. Like you get a letter of recommendation, you get whatever you want. Frankly, I don't really even care.
That's exactly what it was like with the drill instructors, right? If you ran into them in the field or something, you'd be like,
it's all done.
Yeah, you'd freeze up. You'd be like, no, we're good.
Yeah. And day one, go in with 3x5 cards, hand them out, take one, pass them down. And they're like, oh, fold it in half. They're like, fold it in half. Oh, arts and crafts. I'm like, write your name on it. I can't be bothered to remember your name. And then they're like, oh. And then Smith, why are you here? Well, I signed up because I knew. I was like, no, tell me something, Smith. Tell them sports score, stock tips, talk, Smith. And they're just like, and like, I'll get sent to tolerance camp for that now,
Oh, I love it. We're going to take our last real quick break here on Signal Fire Radio. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with Peter Maguire.
I can listen to your stories for days.
I know.
Yeah. Imagine having that thing stuck inside your head. I'm exhausted.
Do you have a question?
Many universities offer specialized programs in entrepreneurship, and these can be great, but much time can be spent on subjects that may not be particularly useful in running a small business day to day. And they can be a longer time commitment, such as pursuing an MBA that could take anywhere from 1 to 3 years depending on the school and the program. Other options include programs offered by veteran service organizations and other nonprofits. These programs will cover all the functional areas of business, as well as allow you to work on your own business plan that you plan to execute at the end of the program. An example of one of these programs is provided by Vet to CEO, which is a several-week course that takes you through a whole business plan, as well as all the different things that are required to launch your business. And at the end of it, you can follow it up with the Funding Academy, which educates you on different funding options for your new venture. Bottom line is, there are a ton of resources out there for veterans who want to start their own business. It's up to you to do the research and select the one that is best suited for your goals, time frame, and lifestyle.
We started Signal Fire Media with one goal in mind: to make content creation easier for you. Let me tell you a quick story. I own multiple businesses, and in 2020, I opened an insurance agency. Now, I had paid attention to the way that everybody else marketed themselves and their agency, and frankly, I did not want to do the same thing that everybody else did, because I knew that the industry was going somewhere else. There are loads and loads of statistics that say that people will buy from and engage with companies whose leadership show up on video, on social media. There's more than enough social proof out there to suggest that video content gets you better engagement online. And so heading into the opening of this agency, I knew that I needed to have a big digital media presence. What I didn't know though was how video content creation would change my business for the better. I came to a place where I had no network, I had no customers, and so we literally started from ground zero. I started consistently posting video content somewhere around March of 2020, and by October of 2020, we're one of the top 200 commercial insurance agencies in the country. I was recently recognized as being one of the 40 under 40 here by the Wilmington, North Carolina Chamber of Commerce. That if you are thinking of new, meaningful ways to get your message out there, to interact with potential customers, please consider doing video content. And if you want, we would love to have a conversation with you about how we can make video content creation easy for you. Our model is to bring you into our studio for no more than 2 to 4 hours per month and deliver hours of video and audio content for you to use in the digital landscape. If you're interested in finding out more, we'd love to chat with you. At Signal Fire Media, we showcase ambitious leaders in the digital world. Thank you for your interest, and we'll talk to you soon. Welcome to our third and final segment of Signal Fire Radio with our guest Peter Maguire. Matt, Evan, and I were like, this is the I think most intellectual conversation we've had on this show.
Oh, big time.
Yeah,
At minimum.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm encouraged by it though.
So
I'm very encouraged by it.
It sounds like a lot of, like Peter, what you have seen for so many years is what's like wrong, what's bad in the world comes from maybe thin-skinnedness. How do you think, like as a society, like how do you think as a society we build that up? Does it start from the bottom, or does it start from like good examples at the top? Like, what can we do to not be so offended by everything?
That's a great question. I don't really know, and I don't really care. Honestly, I don't really care. Because again, what's their enforcement mechanism? Emotional blackmail. You're going to make me feel bad about myself, and okay. Like
Fear of other people's opinions.
Yeah, FOPO.
Yeah, get in line. Get in line. I had the Khmer Rouge want to blow me up. I got a lot of prominent enemies, and so you're not the first. You won't be the last. And I turn everything off at 5 and I make dinner and I go to bed and I get up at 4 and I do the same thing every day, 7 days a week. And I think that's a big part of it, is that, to get good at anything, you got to do it, and you got to do it with discipline and dedication, and it's not going to come easy, and success is not. It took me 10 years to get my first book published. It was probably 12 publishers, and I was right, but my message was so jarring, and it was that international law is not worth the paper it's written on. And it came at the worst possible time to ever put that message out there. And so, but I didn't quit, and I didn't get the academic jobs I should have, and I didn't whine about it. I just got on with it. And I went, okay, what can I do that these people can't do? Oh, I can go in the field and do stuff that requires risk, because these are risk-averse people. And so, and then I enjoyed it. And then it just kind of took on a life of its own, and that wasn't necessarily good. And then I had an offer to go to Afghanistan very early on. And
Sorry about that.
And then my wife got pregnant, and that was the end of the crazy train. And so that was good. I got off the crazy train because a lot of my friends didn't, and they'll never be even close to normal again. PTSD affects journalists, affects human rights frontline people the same way it does soldiers.
Sure.
I mean, when you're looking into the abyss all the time,
right.
It takes a bite out of you.
Absolutely.
And so that's the thing. And so
That thing you mentioned about there's risk-averse people and less risk-averse people, is that natural or is that learned? Is it inherent?
No, I think that fear is totally normal, and anybody says they're not afraid, like Rickson Gracie says, is either crazy or stupid. And there's some stupid people out there, a lot of stupid people actually, but a lot of that's driven by drugs or, whether it's steroids or meth or whatever. But my thing was I was always very curious, and curiosity to me was a more powerful force than fear. And I would be afraid, but I would also want to know, and I would, and so curiosity was always something very, very powerful, and I think you're born that way. And then I come from a long line of weirdos. I mean, my great grandfather was a judge at Nuremberg. My grandfather ran Operation Magic Carpet and flew something 60,000 Yemenites, concentration camp survivors into Israel. Ben Gurion called him the Irish Moses. And, he's basically a mercenary pilot in the Middle East immediately after World War II. The great risks. And so there's something in our DNA that we do stuff like that. And my grandfather, when I said, I'm going to Cambodia, he goes, good, don't be careful. Careful kills.
Are you teaching that to you said you have 2 sons. You see that being passed down now one more generation in what I would consider to be a highly sanitized societal moment that we're in?
I homeschooled them for almost 5 years out of sheer disgust with both private and public education. So I would say, have the equivalent of an undergraduate degree. We began at the invention of fire and taught history all the way up to the Vietnam War. Genghis Khan, you got to know the Mongols, you got to know the Romans, you got to know Islam, Christianity, and Judaism and the conflict in the Middle East to understand the Middle East. So they're kind of wise beyond their years. The older one is started at Cape Fear at 16 and is studying welding and a lot of engineering stuff. The younger one's more artistic.
And what are their names?
Seaborn and Joe.
Seaborn and Joe.
Yeah.
God bless, dude.
I love it.
It just keeps coming.
Total hippie name and then Joe.
Yeah, and they're both great at what they do, and we encourage them to be great. And the young one's a ballet dancer and an unbelievable freestyle skateboarder. The other one just got his blue belt from Rickson Gracie and trains at John Salter's terrifying academy here in Wilmington that I'm way too old to set foot on those mats.
Yeah, you're going to pop a collarbone right out.
No, there's some monsters at that gym.
Yeah, and he's really good and getting better. And I've never pushed him for the sake of me or my ego or anything. And they've done it his whole life and likes it. But it's not that fun. I mean, martial arts and having some gross sweaty guy in a stinky gi on top of you, it ain't that fun.
That's Matt's dream day.
Yeah.
I think it's fun.
I do too. I love doing jiu-jitsu. Always have. Have we arrived at this moment because of education in the United States of America, the education system?
Yeah, it's totally broken down. I mean, it's, the thing is, we talk about critical race theory and this and that. I said, what's it matter when no one can read? What does it matter, the books they are supposedly reading, when they're not reading? I mean, my students at UNCW, I'd give them like a 15-page Surfer's Journal article, and they would complain that it was too much reading. And when I taught at Columbia 20 years ago, I gave them 300 to 500 pages a week of reading, and they did it. And that's the erosion of standards,
It's the instant gratification that everybody wants.
Exactly.
The magic pill, the switch, and the
screen.
Watch that 15-second video and I learn everything
Jobs.
right there.
Yeah.
And the screen, And I like
As
books.
I'm checking my phone.
And I like paper. And
Yeah.
I like books. And I read every night. And, Amazon sent us the thing, to get the new thing, you're going to need a new device, a new TV. And I said, let's not have a TV. How's that sound? Like, I'm getting less and less enamored with TV. It just pisses me off. So I'll go back to the analog world very happily.
I think like a lot of people can benefit from that.
Yeah.
I think we as a society can benefit from that because we're just so inundated with crap.
Well,
all
let's
the
go
time.
faster and faster and faster. Where?
Right.
Why?
Those roads to nowhere, like the Khmer Rouge again.
Exactly. Like, what are we rushing through life for? What's at the end? And I think if we took more joy in the process, and people could see that's what Nietzsche called the gay science. That the great philosopher, the great artist, he had a big smile on his face. He was enjoying every day. He wasn't what Nietzsche called, I think it was the farmer of the spirit. And that's the guy in the university. Oh, this is so hard. Oh, my work is so serious. No, it wasn't like that at all. The truly great, he's singing from the top of a mountain, and I think that's what should be celebrated,
How do we get to that at scale?
Not quickly,
Yeah.
And again, there a similar cultural revolution, but I think it's going to be a painful birthing process.
Yeah. Do you think you've obviously seemed to study the breadth of human history. We see periods where we go through great enlightenments and Renaissance and art and deep thinking and philosophy. Are we due for another one of those?
Well, I'll leave you with this. There are many different definitions of freedom. There's the lion's freedom, and there's the lamb's freedom. The lamb's freedom is being free of the fear of being eaten by the lion. But the lion's freedom involves risk. The lion breaks his leg, he gets killed. That doesn't matter who you are, biggest, baddest male lion. So to live that freedom, you have to accept the fact that there's risk involved. And we have this risk-averse society that wants everything, and it wants it in writing and contract before it even engages in risk. And I don't share that view, and I lead a risky life. And sometimes I don't have health insurance, and sometimes I don't know, and I could choose stability, but in order to choose stability, I would then have to make some sacrifices that would not make me feel good about myself. I could be a lot more successful in Hollywood, but I would have to make some compromises I wouldn't feel good about. And I'm too old now. I'm 56, I'm sour milk.
Not at all.
I love it. That is coming full circle right there. Hey, The Lion's Freedom, name of the episode, okay, Josh? I like that. I'm going to read into that a little bit more. Peter, thank you so much for coming on.
Anytime.
Yeah,
It's great.
Yeah, that was a fantastic conversation. I'm going to be reliving it for the next probably several hours.
We got a free lecture.
I'm gonna put it. I'm gonna put it all down for a minute, and then I'm gonna get on the group thread, and I'm gonna text you guys in like an hour.
I might
hour and a
start
half.
teaching again in a pub. I think that's better.
Why not?
Like, you know what?
Right?
I may just go to a pub
At the steps of the Acropolis.
Yeah.
you know,
Talk about
like
Socrates
just-
again.
Yeah.
and because like my best students are older, are the people that have real intellectual curiosity. Typically are older, and I have more fun with them, than the kids, and it's so we'll see.
I'm all for it.
Yeah, if you're going to be lecturing at a pub and I can have a cold crispy boy and listen to you talk unfiltered for 2 hours.
Oh, wait till I
learn
get to the third one.
Yeah.
It's gonna get really interesting.
We're just entering into the third act.
Keep 'em coming. Yeah.
I love it. I love it, Peter. Thank you so very much for coming. Matthew, anything?
I'm just reveling in this whole
Good
last
job.
hour.
Good guest,
Yeah.
buddy.
Yeah.
Good guest. You get the NWO championship belt for the day for best guest. Evan, anything?
Yeah, I just already ready to like listen and ruminate on this one.
I got to go brush up on my Nietzsche. It's been a minute. It's been a
Don't
minute.
go too far with Nietzsche.
Yeah. You go deep.
Little Nietzsche goes a long way.
There you go, Matt.
I got friends who have been driven crazy by Nietzsche.
Yeah.
And thought they were the Ubermensch. So it's a fine line.
You just see them in their bedroom like rocking
Yeah.
forward. Nietzsche.
They pulled all their hair out.
I know. I love it. All right, that's going to do it for this episode of Signal Fire Radio. Until next time, go out there and feed your mind, strengthen your body, enrich your spirit, and grow your tribe, and go be a Signal Fire in your community. We love you, and we'll talk to you next Monday.